Well, welcome guys back to another episode of our little podcast here at the Catskill Outdoorsmen. I've got Avery Bear here with me, and I am Laura Eisenhart. The main focus of our episode today is we're going to be talking about women and archery, the challenges we go through, kind of the cons, the pros and cons, and all that good stuff. So I think we needed to start off on what are the challenges that women really face when you're shooting and why there needs to be separate divisions.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing that's kind of obvious is the physicality of shooting a bow.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing being your draw weight. So we run into it all the time. Right now your bow is what, 35 pounds?
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of effort to pull that bow back for you. And when you're shooting compared to somebody that's shooting 60, 70 pounds, they're going to get a lot more speed out of that arrow. They're going to have better trajectory. They're going to have a flatter arrow. And if they're judging, they're going to have a lot more forgivability if they're a yard or two off.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a longer draw length. What's your draw length right now?
About 25, I think.
25? Yeah, I'm about 25 as well. So that arrow is going to be spending less time in the bow. And again, you're going to have less forgivability.
Yep.
When you get to that pro level, I think it's very hard to see the difference between the compatibility of men and women. They're all putting up very similar scores. I think there's more in the judging, and again, that comes from women not necessarily having as high a draw weight and their draw length, but especially on the known side, I mean, the scores are very comparable. And look at indoor at 20 yards. There's no reason that women can't shoot the same scores that men are putting up.
Yeah.
There are a lot of barriers, though. I mean, what have you run into?
I think it's definitely a lot difficult, especially since I'm used to shooting a higher class than I should be in, because there's not really usually any people in the youth classes. I usually go towards the adult side. When I shoot with women in the women's class, they obviously have a lot higher draw weight than me and draw length. So that is the downside. But then if I shoot in the youth class, I'm just shooting against myself. It's hard to have a sense of competitiveness when you're just all by yourself, and that definitely makes it more difficult to improve.
Yeah, on the local level, it's very hard to find large divisions of women to shoot with. And then once you do eventually make it to that national competition, you suddenly have this much deeper shooting pool. And to shoot against these women can be really intense. But it's a punch to the face a little bit. It kind of comes out of left field. You know, you come out of these regional tournaments, you're like, yeah, I'm on the podium almost every single time. We're doing good. And all of a sudden, that uphill climb becomes a lot steeper.
Yeah.
I've seen that at the ASAs at the national level. And the women that are at those divisions, they're so wonderful. They're so welcoming. They're always there to teach you what's going on. But that competition is really fierce, and there's money on the line, and it's intense. But I think that's where you grow the most, too, is when you're in those new situations with new competition.
Yeah. Like when we went to Lancaster, what was that, February? In local tournaments, I'm always one of the top competitors considering there's so few people in my class. But you go there, and it's like, wow, there's suddenly 80 people in my class. And you're definitely not one of the top competitors.
And those, even if they're youth, they're putting up scores that are competitive with the adults.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's shocking, honestly, because it's so hard to get used to shooting with so many people when you're just not used to it. And I feel like that really mostly just happens to the women's classes. I mean, just this past few weekend, we went and shot the ASA up at Tri-Cities.
Yeah, all of the regional ASA qualifiers.
Yeah, there was only, maybe 2 including you in your class?
Yeah.
And I was the only one in my class. And like Laura said, when she went to the national ASA, there was how many?
At the small size, this past one in Louisiana was 30, and that's a smaller, usually there's less attendance there. In Foley, there was probably 80 women.
Yeah.
It's a huge, huge jump. And it's great to really help kind of get yourself in a better mindset and really see where you lay out on a national level. But those first couple events, it hits you like a ton of bricks. Like, holy crap, this is intense.
Yeah, but it's also, I think, very helpful and supportive because we're all very close-knit to each other.
Because you understand the same struggles. I mean,
Yeah.
around here, the two of us are here in the shop. We've got, really, in the local level, I feel like for the youth, there's a lot more girls than there are boys, but once you get to the adult level, it's not so much. So you definitely can have the camaraderie of other girls, but as you get a little older, it's hard to find.
Yeah, especially around my age range, like, teenagers, I feel like it's very difficult to find other people to shoot with.
Yeah. And shooting with other people makes a world of a difference. Just
It
having
does.
training buddy, coaching buddy, just people to keep you motivated. It's huge. I remember it was really fun when we went to Lancaster just this back time, and I really pushed you to do the adult division because I just thought it was going to be an important push for you.
Yep.
And we got there, and we all kind of had this oh crap moment where it was thousands of people spread about, and we were all in a little cluster over here, and you drew the short end of the stick, and you were in your own group way down there. And I was so worried about you until this older woman came up and literally just took you under her wing, and you guys were just boom chatting, and I was like, oh, okay, she's good.
Yeah, I think that was definitely, it helped me a lot because she was in the same place as me, and she had actually done Lancaster for like a long time.
Since they've been doing it?
Yeah. So she understood what it was like to be like me, shooting against, all these people that you don't know, and, so just having somebody to chat with and to, joke around with, it definitely helps because that's such a serious, very, very serious shoot.
Lancaster is very intense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's that level of intensity at all the national shoots, but Lancaster's its own beast.
Yeah, it's definitely very emotionally heavy, so you just need to be able to have fun with it.
Now, this year, I feel like you've been throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks. You're trying all these different events, and you're seeing which ones you really like. Now, you've been doing the ASAs with Noah and I, and specifically starting at the Avon qualifier for New York and then on to Tri-Cities. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you learned?
Okay, so Avon was definitely very rough for me.
What?
So when we first got there, it was raining, and I have never shot outside in the rain before that. So I had to get used to, all the scope covers and the peep covers.
And you just moved to open too, so that's a huge transition.
Yeah, I just moved to open this past year. It was definitely very weird because we're out in the woods. You need to be able to adjust when things go wrong on the fly. Like it just happens like that. When we were in Avon, I'm not even sure why it happened. Do you remember?
It might have gotten caught on something or just loosened up, because all the time I'll have to take my little key and just tighten up my peep. So.
Yeah. I was just shooting and my peep just popped out. Thankfully, it's my hand ski and it did not fly all the way out because it definitely would have been interesting to find that in the woods.
I don't know if you ever would have.
Yeah, probably not. But you have to have the knowledge to know how to fix that stuff when you're literally out in the woods. So what we ended up doing was Ken drew my bow back, and then Shane was trying to just shove my peep back in.
Yeah, we basically turned Ken into a human bow press.
Yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking, and it did kind of put my game off for the rest of the day because it's just like that thing that just sits in the back of your head.
It's hard to shake that off when something moves in your equipment, because we tell you all the time, you change one thing, you change everything.
Yeah.
Those tiny little minuscule changes, once you get to that next shot, it is very tricky to just wipe that out of your brain and go, okay, just make the shot, who cares what happens? You know?
But then we went to Tri-Cities, and I think all that knowledge helped me a ton because for whatever reason, I guess just the weather doesn't like me.
You're a little rain stick, that's all.
It was raining there again, so I already had the knowledge of how to handle it, and it helped me a ton. And just being able to shoot with other people that already know you and that you're comfortable with, it helps a ton. Even though I had a few slip-ups during that one, like setting my sight wrong, which I think happens to all of us.
Everybody does it. If somebody says they haven't, they're full of it.
Yeah.
Everybody's done it. And that's another thing too, is it's how you recover from those mistakes. It's like, okay, I misset my sight on that last one, or I pulled my shot on that last one. It's like, all right, reset, let's try again. That's what really separates the amateurs from the pros eventually, I think.
Yeah, honestly, archery is definitely a physical sport. And if anybody says that, oh, it's not really that challenging physically, they're lying to you. But honestly, most of it is mental because when you have a bad shot or you have an equipment error, you need to be able to just put that behind and not let it affect you for the rest of the day.
Like we say all the time, it's 90% mental, the other 10% is in your head.
Yeah.
So definitely. It's kind of funny, I've kind of a sidetrack here. I've heard a lot of bear bow people and recurve from time to time. They'll say, oh, well, with compound, it's so easy, and it's, you know, you don't have that same relationship with your bow because it's a machine. I'd almost argue you have more of a relationship because you have so many moving parts that you have to have an intimate relationship with to make it successful.
And I don't want to sound like, you know, like derogatory towards recurve people, but I feel like there's so many more steps that you need to be able to remember. Like, especially with open class, since you have a lens, you need to know, oh, well, this is downhill, this is uphill. You have, you know, clicker sight. You need to be able to know, okay, do I need to adjust this down to your 2 yards or up 2 yards from my actual mark? Because the way that it just works.
Like, you know, today you might be out in the practice range and you're pinning everything at 40, 50 yards. You're fine. You go out to that first target and you're like an inch low and you're like, that shot was fine. But that transition from paper to foam, lighting, wind, whatever, can be funky.
Yeah.
So you have those little things to worry about all the time. And you know, I find that difference in transitioning from my bow hunter setup to my open setup can mess with my head. We had a competition just about 2 or 3 weeks ago now. It was bow hunter only setup, which was really fun, and I used the same bow that I normally run, just swapped out the stabilizers and swapped out my scope. Going back to an open setup, it was like, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah.
It's like going from a four-wheeler to a Ferrari. They're both great in their own applications, but the second you try and mix them and use them in different scenarios, it's funky.
Yeah, I think being open, there's so many like weird technicalities that like other classes they just don't understand.
I don't know if it's so much that they don't understand, it's the level of accuracy that is expected to be competitive in each division just is reflected based on the precision that the equipment allows.
Yeah.
So this year, my husband and I are really focusing on the National ASA circuit, and I feel that as a woman, I really have a place to go now because Paige Pierce and other ladies have really pushed for their own division at the professional level. So there's a place for us to go. How do you feel about that?
I think it's really good because I just want to point out that at Reading in California, Paige Pierce actually shot in the men's division. And it just shows that even though they are pushing for that thing, there are still certain limitations, and it just, you know, it just proves it even further. But I think that they're working very hard to make this sport more accessible for women. You know, even just
it can be an emotional blockage too. I know here on the local level when we run smaller tournaments and we have to combine divisions just for the sake of the smoothness of the day. I mean, what's the point of doing a shoot-off when you have 1 or 2 women? That can really be a turn-off for ladies that are new to the sport. I mean, if you're competing against a man that's been shooting for 10 years, a lot of women, you know what, I just don't want to compete because there's no point. They don't see as a place for them to grow. I even know that on the local level, I feel bad half the time. I feel in a very weird spot where, okay, do I put myself at a disadvantage and shoot against the men and deal with that mental block? Or do I shoot with the women and give myself a shoo-in? And I kind of been tossing back and forth with that.
Yeah, I think they're definitely making the sport a lot more known for women. And that's just huge because the more people that know, the more that we'll have, you know, competing in these events. And it's just, I think it's an amazing sport because not only does it help you physically, but it also helps you grow so much mentally. Like, for example, the first time I went to Lancaster, it was 2 years ago. I was in an absolute mess.
Well, we kind of threw you guys to the lions with that one.
Yeah, that was one of the first indoor shoots I've ever done. And I was just a mess. I was like literally bawling my eyes out the whole time. But, you know, competing, but having that knowledge after doing it the first time and having that camaraderie with all the other ladies, the second time I went, which was just this past year, it was like smooth sailing all the way through.
Completely different.
I understood that, like, yeah, everybody's there for each other.
Yeah. And that camaraderie is really something that we tout a lot in the sport. But unfortunately, I don't know about you, but I do run into some heckling from time to time. What have you seen?
I think it's definitely a thing. Like, you'll go to a shoot and, shoot against some people, like some men that you don't know, and they like underestimate you. They think that they can't put up good scores just because they're women. But it feels so good when
you can kick their butts.
Yeah, when you beat them all, and then they're like shocked.
Then they shut up. They have nothing to say. We were at a bow hunting competition a couple weeks ago, and we were in the final shoot down for the women, and there was a whole pack of men in the back where, I identify as a woman, ha ha ha, I can shoot. And it's like, all right, you really feel that insecure about yourself that you can't compete with the men's division, you have to bump yourself over to the ladies?
Yeah.
And besides, I knew I could outshoot any of them because I did. My high score was better than any of theirs that day.
Yeah. I think, I don't understand it because even though we do have physical limitations, if you look at the pros like Paige Pierce and Ella Gibson, they are putting up better scores than like
most of the men.
every man out there.
Yeah. And on any day, they can be just as competitive, and they're fiercer competitor. They can be very fierce competitors. They have to be, especially when they're trying to push to create their own divisions. Like Paige Pierce just really pushed, and the other women to get the pro division for ASA, and it's a smaller division, but it's steadily growing. And I know there's a lot of women in my division, K45, that have major aspirations to get there, including myself. 2 years ago, it wasn't even a thought that you would think of. It's like, well, if I go pro, it's got to be with the men.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, what's the point almost?
I think it's very inspiring, even if just a few years there wasn't very many women's classes, but you can just see now that they are established, you can see how quickly they're growing.
It's the fastest growing demographic in the sport is women.
Yeah.
And in hunting too. We were coming back from some tournament, I remember, and we threw on a Bow Junkie Media podcast about Paige Pierce and her lion hunt in Africa. And she was very passionate about that, not just for growing bow hunting, because in a lot of parts of the world it's still not seen as an ethical form of hunting because it's not seen as effective as hunting with a rifle or that sort of thing. And she did this as a way to say, hey, look, me as a quote-unquote small, weak little woman, I can put down a lion.
Yeah.
And her hunt had a bit of a sketchy moment when she did finally harvest the lion. She was able to put it down, and she made a great heart shot. The lion was definitely going to go down, but her guides went ahead and dispatched the animal with a rifle. And she said that she was sick for hours, sick to her stomach, just worried that, okay, was it me that put that animal down, or was it the rifles that put the animal down? Because she was so focused and worried about making sure that the image was out there that, yes, a female bow hunter can put down these top predators like this, because she cares so much about the sport. She understands the implications for women like you and me that are pushing to aspire to her level.
And I think it just shows even further, like, you said that she had a beautiful shot, and the people with her still decided that they needed to do that. Just showing that they have that thought in the back of her mind, that back of their minds, that she might not be capable of it.
And even if it's not a capability thing, it's a catch-22 that those guides have out there for the safety of their clients versus the sake of the hunt and the sanctity of the hunt.
Yeah.
So, do you have any aspirations to go bow hunt?
Honestly, no. I think for me, I like indoor a lot. I think that's my passion, and I don't know. I just don't feel the need to hunt.
Yeah,
it
that's
just
something you have
just doesn't interest me. But I definitely respect people who do it, and I think that it takes a lot of effort and knowledge.
It's a lot of hard work. My husband and I were planning on going on a mule deer hunt in December, and the amount of training that we're putting in to make that happen is ridiculous. So here on the East Coast, when we're doing whitetail deer hunting, which is primarily what we do with bow hunting, your max shot is 40 yards, 50 would be a lot. Out of a tree stand, they're usually within 15, 20 yards. So the legal hunting limit to use a bow is 35 pounds. So you could hunt with your bow no problem, and I feel comfortable putting you in a tree stand. You're more than capable of it. You go out west, and our guide is like, hey, you need to be out to 60 at the very least, and you could have a 100-yard shot. It's like, all right, how do we do this? So back in February, I ended up purchasing a new hunting bow, a Dart and Veracity, because I knew I needed something with the speed, again, just to help propel that arrow to make a more lethal shot. Slowly cranking that bow up to 60 pounds. My target bow is 50 pounds, which is, I'd say for someone my size, is probably pretty average. I think for most women, I know a lot of the pros. I'm pretty sure Paige Pierce, her target bow is like 60 pounds for outdoor. I think indoor it's a little lighter. But with her recent surgery, she definitely had to lighten it up. But for Arizona, that's been a huge push for my skills. Is I know I want to be able to make a clean shot and an ethical shot. You know, if that beautiful mule deer comes out at 80 yards, am I going to waste my whole hunt because I don't feel comfortable, or am I going to spend these next 6 months prepping at 80 yards, creating a setup that I know is going to work?
Yeah, it just goes to show that, you know, even hunting, it might not be so accessible for women because you said you need to be at 60 pounds. You know, a lot of women can't do that.
It's a lot of extra work. I mean, Noah, he's at 60 pounds, 70 pounds, no problem. Yeah, he has a bow that's going to be specifically set up for that hunt, but he doesn't need to train for months like I do.
Yeah.
I think I have him beat with the hiking because I, hike for a living. And our guide's like, yeah, you could have an 8-mile hike, but it's definitely a challenge with the bow.
Yeah, like even like someone with me, I have, with my short draw length, and obviously I don't know, I'm pretty short. I just want to put that out there. It would definitely be a lot of work for me to get up to poundage that high.
Yeah. I mean, I'm taller than you, but my draw length is short too. But I still am going to have an advantage with a higher poundage over you just because of my mass. Yeah. I got more to pull the bow back with. It makes a difference. I know our guide is a bigger guy, and I think he has his bow up to like 80 pounds, and he's pushing like a 500 grain arrow to really make that good shot, to get the good penetration and all of that, which is really nice because, God forbid, no matter what you do, when you're in that situation, you have that animal in front of you, you could have practiced that shot 100 times, 1,000,000 times, 1,000 times. And one little bobble, one little movement downrange, a gust of wind, and that perfect shot turns into a gut shot or something. You want your arrow to be the most lethal that it can be. You want your bow to be set up to be the most lethal it can be to be able to put that animal down.
Yeah, it definitely. You can practice as much as you want, but when it comes to the actual moment, like the whole mentality and everything, it just changes.
And that's why I love competitive shooting. There's a lot of hunters that, I don't really want to pound paper. It's boring. It's this, it's that. Like, yeah, pounding paper can get really boring. But by spending all that time behind the bow, you're going to make your shot better. And I don't know about you, but even when we're here in the shop and we have our little mock Lancaster archery podiums, you step up on there and that shake, that rush of nerves, that's the only time that I have been able to replicate that feeling of a deer in front of you.
Yeah, you need to, even if you find punching paper boring, which personally I do, I definitely prefer 3D.
Yeah.
If you only practice during hunting season, you're never going to be able to get used to that feeling of the pressure and the competitiveness, which is why you just need to, go to even just the local tournaments that have shoot-ups, because the pressure just completely changes.
Completely changes your shot, and the more you can practice it, the more you'll be comfortable with it, the more you're going to know how your body and your mind reacts to it. So, shooting at archery as a woman definitely has a lot of challenges, but I think that makes it all the more rewarding because you have that steeper uphill climb, but once you get there, it feels great.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of adversities towards you, but it helps you grow more, with all the physical limitations and mentally, it's rough having to shoot in your own division, but sometimes it helps you, just like being able to spend time with yourself and, really having a relationship with your equipment. And, it helps you to be better because you have to have that thought, like, yeah, I'm shooting with myself right now, but I will be shooting with other people, like especially at Lancaster. It helps you still have that thought in the back of your head.
So overall, there are a lot of challenges of shooting as a woman, but it's very rewarding, and I'm glad I get to do it with you. So that's all we have for today, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, guys. That's the title of this podcast. Ugh, men.